I knew I had to leave the moment Alexander told me my future was no longer mine to choose. Rain tapped against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse as I stood beneath a chandelier that cost more than my entire apartment. My name is Claire Morgan, and for 2 years, I had lived inside Alexander Blackwood's world. He was powerful, respected, and feared in ways people rarely said out loud. I had once mistaken that power for security. That night, I finally understood the difference. Alexander stood across the marble room in his tailored black suit, holding a single envelope. "The arrangement is settled," he said. "Your family has agreed." I stared at him. My family agreed to what? He placed the envelope on the table. "Our marriage will happen this fall." The room seemed to become completely silent. "You decided that?" I asked. "It is the logical next step." His voice was calm, almost gentle. That somehow made it worse. I looked at the envelope but did not touch it. Inside was a future I had never chosen, written in language that made my life sound like a business agreement. "Alexander, I never said I wanted this." His expression barely changed. "You will understand eventually." That sentence broke something inside me. Not because he was cruel, because he truly believed my feelings would eventually become irrelevant. I took a slow breath. "No," he looked at me. "No, I am leaving." For the first time that evening, silence appeared between us like a wall. Alexander's eyes narrowed, but he did not raise his voice. "You do not know what is waiting outside these doors." "Maybe not." I picked up my coat. "But at least it will be my choice." I walked toward the elevator with my heart pounding so loudly that I could barely hear the rain. Behind me, Alexander said my name. I stopped. "Claire." I turned. "You will come back." I looked at the man I had once believed could protect me from anything and realized I no longer wanted protection that came with conditions. "Maybe," I whispered, "but not because you tell me to." The elevator doors closed between us. I thought that was the end. I was wrong. 20 minutes later, I was standing beneath the awning of a quiet hotel several miles away, staring at my phone while dozens of messages appeared on the screen. Then a black sedan stopped at the curb. My heart tightened. I expected Alexander. Instead, another man stepped out. I recognized him immediately. Damian Blackwood, Alexander's younger brother. The brother everyone described with a different word. Dangerous. He walked toward me without rushing, his dark coat wet from the rain, his expression unreadable. I took one step back. "Did Alexander send you?" Damian stopped several feet away. "No, then why are you here?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Because I knew you would leave." My breath caught. "How?" His eyes shifted toward the envelope still clutched in my hand. "Because I was the one person in that family who knew what was inside it." He reached into his coat and placed a small key on the ledge beside me. "There is an apartment across town. It is empty. No one knows about it." I stared at the key. "Why are you helping me?" Damian's expression softened, just slightly. "Because if you want to leave my brother, Claire, you should be allowed to leave." I looked at him, stunned by the words I had never heard from Alexander. Damian stepped back. "You decide what happens next." Then he turned toward the waiting sedan. I looked down at the key in my hand, and for the first time that night, I wondered if the brother everyone feared was actually the one man who had no intention of controlling me. The key felt heavier than it should have as I stood beneath the hotel awning, listening to the rain slide from the edge of the roof. I kept turning it between my fingers, wondering why the most frightening man in the Blackwood family had just given me a way out. Damian had already driven away, leaving me with one simple choice. I could stay where I was and wait for Alexander to find me, or I could trust the brother everyone warned me about. I chose the key. The apartment was 12 miles across town, tucked above a quiet coffee shop on a street I had never noticed before. When I unlocked the door, I expected something cold and empty. Instead, there was a warm lamp glowing in the living room, a clean kitchen, fresh towels, and a small vase of white flowers on the table. Nothing extravagant, nothing that looked like a trap, just a place where I could breathe. I set my suitcase down and stood in the silence. For the first time in 2 years, nobody knew exactly where I was. That thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like freedom. My phone buzzed. "Alexander." I stared at his name until the screen went dark. Then it buzzed again. I did not answer. A few minutes later, another message appeared. "Come home." I deleted it. Then another. "We need to talk." I deleted that one too. My hands were still shaking when I heard a soft knock at the door. I froze. Nobody knew where I was. Or at least, nobody should have. I walked toward the door and looked through the peephole. Damien stood in the hallway holding a paper bag and a dark umbrella. I opened the door only a few inches. How did you find me? I own the building. I stared at him. Of course you do. A faint smile appeared on his face. I brought dinner. I did not ask you to. I know. He held up the bag. You also probably forgot to eat. I wanted to refuse. Instead, I opened the door. Damien stepped inside but stopped near the entrance, as if waiting for permission to go any farther. That small gesture surprised me more than anything else. Alexander never waited. He assumed every room belonged to him. Damien looked around the apartment. It is safe here. You keep saying that. Because I know you are wondering. Wondering what? He looked directly at me. Whether helping you has a price. My throat tightened. Does it? No, why? Damien placed the food on the kitchen counter. Because you left my brother. You did not leave him for me. I looked away. I do not understand you. You are not supposed to. His voice was quiet. Most people decide who I am before I say a word. I studied him. And what am I supposed to think? Nothing yet. He picked up his umbrella. Take your time. He reached the door, then stopped. Claire. Yes. Do not answer Alexander tonight. My heart skipped. Why? Damien's expression changed. The softness disappeared, replaced by something guarded and serious. Because he is going to tell you that leaving him was a mistake. He opened the door, and he knows exactly which words will make you believe it. Then he walked into the hallway and disappeared down the stairs. I closed the door slowly. On the kitchen counter, the paper bag was still warm. I opened it and found soup, bread, and a small note written in Damien's handwriting. You do not owe me anything. I read it twice. Then my phone lit up again. This time, the message was from Alexander. I know where you are. I know where you are. Alexander's message stayed on my screen long after I had read it. I sat at the small kitchen table, listening to the rain against the apartment windows, while Damien's note remained beside my untouched coffee. You do not owe me anything. Those 6 words felt strangely important now. I had spent 2 years believing that everything around Alexander came with a price. Every favor, every gift, every promise. Even kindness had always felt like something I would eventually have to repay. Damien had given me a key and asked for nothing. That should have made trusting him easier. Instead, it made me more suspicious. My phone rang. Alexander. I let it ring until the screen went dark. Then I heard another notification. I opened the message. You deserve to know what Damien has not told you. My stomach tightened. Before I could answer, another message appeared. Ask him why he left the family 3 years ago. I stared at those words. 3 years ago. I had never heard that story. The next morning, I called Damien. He answered on the second ring. Claire, Alexander says you left the family. Silence. Not long. Just long enough to tell me the answer mattered. He told you that. He told me to ask you why. Damien exhaled slowly. Then I suppose you should know. We met at a quiet diner several blocks from my apartment. It was early, barely 8 in the morning, and only a few tables were occupied. Damien arrived wearing a dark coat and carrying a cup of coffee. He sat across from me. 3 years ago, I walked away from the family business. Why? Because I realized I was becoming someone I did not recognize. I waited. Alexander had already taken control of everything by then, he continued. He believed power meant making every decision before anyone else could make it. I thought I could change the way things worked from inside the family. He gave a quiet, almost humorless smile. I was wrong. So you left? Yes. And then what happened? I stayed away until my father became ill. His eyes lowered to the table. I came back because I could not abandon my family completely. I studied his face. Does Alexander know? He knows everything. Then why does he call you dangerous? Damien looked at me. Because I do not always agree with him. His answer was simple, but something about it stayed with me. There is more, I said. He nodded. There is always more. He reached into his coat and placed a folded document on the table. This is a copy of the agreement Alexander wanted you to sign. I recognized the same legal language from the envelope he had given me. Why do you have this? Because I saw it before you did. I unfolded the document. My eyes moved across the page until one sentence made my chest tighten. My name was there. So was Alexander's. But beneath our names was another signature. Damien's. I looked up immediately. You signed this. Damien shook his head. No, then why is your name here? He leaned back, his expression suddenly serious. Because 3 years ago, before I left, I was supposed to approve the agreement. I stared at him. What agreement? He looked directly into my eyes. The one that was supposed to decide your future before you ever knew it existed. The diner suddenly felt too quiet. I folded the document with trembling hands. Damien, what exactly did your family plan for me? He did not answer immediately. Then he said, that is the question I was hoping you would never have to ask. If you want the truth, Claire, you need to understand why your name was placed in that agreement. Damien's words followed me all the way back to the apartment. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the document on the diner table and my name beneath Alexander's. By morning, I had made a decision. I called Damien. I want to see the original agreement. There was a pause. Are you sure? Yes. Then I will show you. We met that afternoon at a quiet office building downtown. Damien led me into a private conference room and placed a thick folder on the table. He did not sit beside me. He sat across from me, leaving enough space for me to feel that this was my decision. I opened the folder. The first pages contained legal language I barely understood. Then I saw the section Damien had warned me about. My family had once owed money to the Blackwood family after a failed business partnership. Years earlier, Alexander's father had offered financial assistance. In return, both families had agreed to maintain a long-term alliance. My name had been added later because Alexander wanted to formalize the arrangement through marriage. I stared at the page. My parents agreed to this. They agreed to the original business arrangement, Damien said. They did not agree to everything Alexander added later. I looked up. Then how did he get this far? Because nobody challenged him. My hands tightened around the folder. Except you. Damien nodded. I challenged him. And that is why you left? Partly. He looked toward the window. I could not stay in a family where decisions about other people's lives were treated like business strategy. His honesty unsettled me more than any threat could have. I had expected secrets. I had expected manipulation. I had not expected someone to admit that he had walked away because he was afraid of becoming like his brother. Before I could respond, the conference room door opened. Alexander stood in the doorway. My heart stopped for a moment. He looked exactly as he always had, perfectly composed in a dark suit, as if nothing in the world could surprise him. His eyes moved from me to Damien. I see you found her. Damien remained calm. She found me. Alexander looked at me. Claire, come home. I shook my head. No, his expression tightened. You are making a mistake. You decided my future without asking me. I was protecting you. Protection does not require permission to control someone. He said nothing. Damien stayed silent. That mattered. He could have stepped between us. He could have answered for me. Instead, he let me speak. Alexander looked at his brother. And you think you are better than me? Damien's voice was quiet. This is not about me. Everything becomes about you when she chooses you. I turned toward Alexander. You still do not understand. He looked at me. Understand what? I placed the agreement on the table. I am not choosing Damien over you. The room went silent. Alexander's expression changed. Then what are you doing? I took a breath. I am choosing myself. For the first time, neither brother had an answer. I picked up my coat and walked toward the door. Damien followed only after I reached it. Outside, the winter air felt cold against my face. I looked at him. You could have said something in there. You did not need me to. I smiled faintly. That may be the first thing anyone in your family has ever understood about me. Damien looked toward the street. There is still something you need to know. I frowned. What? He hesitated. The agreement was not the only thing Alexander kept from you. The words followed me all the way back to the apartment. The agreement was not the only thing Alexander had kept from me. I kept hearing Damien's voice, quiet and careful, as if he already knew the next truth would change everything. By the time I reached my door, I had decided I was done being afraid of unanswered questions. I called him. Tell me. Damien was silent for a moment. There is a file you need to see. Where? My office. I arrived an hour later. Damien was already waiting beside a long wooden table, a single folder resting in front of him. This time, he did not open it for me. He pushed it across the table and let me decide when to look. Inside were financial records, old letters, and copies of correspondence between the Blackwood family and several companies I recognized from my father's business history. I turned one page after another until I found a familiar name. My father's company. What am I looking at? I asked. The reason your family needed help in the first place. Damien sat across from me. Your father's company was struggling. Alexander's father offered financial assistance. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, but it was not. No, I kept reading. The documents showed that someone had quietly redirected several payments away from my father's company years earlier. The losses had made the business appear far less stable than it really was. Who did this? I asked. Damien looked at the folder. We do not know yet. You said there was another secret. There is. He slid one final document toward me. It was a recent report. My eyes moved down the page. A company connected to Victor Hale had been communicating with someone inside the Blackwood organization. Victor Hale. I knew the name. Alexander had mentioned him only once, describing him as an old rival who wanted influence over the family business. Why does this involve me? I asked. Damien's expression became serious. Because your father's company is still connected to the same accounts. I looked up. You think someone is using my family again? I think someone wants Alexander distracted. And I am the distraction? You may be more than that. He paused. You may be the missing piece. I leaned back, trying to process everything. Why did you not tell me this before? Because I wanted you away from all of it. You could have trusted me. I know. His voice softened. I was wrong. That admission surprised me. Damien Blackwood, the man everyone described as impossible to read, was sitting across from me admitting that he had made a mistake. What happens now? I asked. You decide. I almost laughed. You really like saying that. Because it is true. He closed the folder. I can arrange for you to leave the city. I can help you find a new place. Or you can stay and learn what really happened to your father's company. I looked at the documents again. Part of me wanted to walk away. Another part needed the truth. I am staying. Damien nodded. Then I will stay too. You do not have to. I know. He looked directly at me. That is why I am choosing to. Something shifted between us in that moment. It was not a promise. It was not a declaration. It was simply the first time I realized Damien was no longer helping me because he felt responsible for what his family had done. He was helping me because he believed I deserved the truth. That evening, I returned to the apartment with the folder under my arm. I thought the hardest part would be discovering what Alexander had hidden. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing that the man I had been taught to fear might be the only person willing to stand beside me without asking me to belong to him. The next morning, I woke before sunrise with one thought repeating in my mind. If Victor Hale was connected to someone inside the Blackwood organization, then staying in the city was no longer just about finding the truth. It was about understanding who I could trust. I called Damien before I even made coffee. He answered almost immediately. You are awake early. I barely slept. Neither did I. His voice sounded tired. What did you find? I asked. A name. My heart tightened. Whose? I want to show you in person. An hour later, we met at a quiet office downtown. Damien placed a laptop on the table and opened a series of financial records. One name appeared repeatedly beside transfers connected to Victor Hale. It belonged to someone I recognized. Marcus Reed, I whispered. Marcus had worked for the Blackwood family for years. He had been one of the people Alexander trusted most. He has access to the old financial accounts, Damien said, and he has been communicating with Victor for several months. I stared at the screen. Does Alexander know? Not yet. Why not tell him? Damien looked at me carefully. Because I do not know who Alexander trusts anymore. I understood immediately. The problem was larger than one secret agreement. Someone had been moving information between two sides of the family for months, and nobody knew how far it went. What do we do? I asked. Damien closed the laptop. We verify everything before we make an accusation. That sounds reasonable. It is also safer. I looked at him. You keep saying safe. He smiled faintly. Because I know what happens when people stop thinking clearly. We spent the afternoon reviewing records, comparing dates, and tracing old business decisions. Nothing about it felt dramatic. That was what made it unsettling. The truth was hidden in ordinary numbers and forgotten documents. By evening, we found something that changed the entire picture. A transfer from my father's company had been approved on the same day Alexander first met me. I stared at the date. That cannot be right. Damien leaned closer to the screen. Why? Because Alexander told me we met by coincidence. Damien became silent. Claire, are you sure? I remember the date. I looked at him. He knew who I was before we met. The room seemed suddenly smaller. All the memories I had trusted began rearranging themselves in my mind. The first dinner, the gifts, the promises, the way Alexander had always seemed to know exactly what I needed before I said it. He did not choose me because he loved me, I whispered. He chose me because of my family. Damien's expression tightened with concern. We do not know that yet. Then find out. He nodded. I will. I looked at him. Why are you doing all this? He did not answer immediately. Because 3 years ago, I should have asked more questions. His eyes met mine. I did not. I walked away instead. And now I am not walking away. Those words stayed with me long after we left the office. Outside, the afternoon light had faded into a cold gray sky. Damien walked beside me without trying to guide me, without telling me what to think. At the corner, I stopped. You know what scares me? He turned. What? I am starting to trust you. His expression softened. You should only trust me if I earn it. I smiled despite myself. That is a very inconvenient answer. I have a habit of being inconvenient. For the first time since I left Alexander, I laughed without forcing it. Then my phone rang. Alexander's name appeared on the screen. I answered. His voice was unusually quiet. Claire, I know what Damien has been showing you. I looked at Damien. Then you know I am finding the truth. Alexander paused. You are finding only half of it. My heart sank. What is the other half? His answer came slowly. Ask Damien why he never told you that he was the one who first put your name on the agreement. I was the one who first put your name on the agreement. Alexander's words followed me into the night. I sat in Damien's car without saying anything, staring through the windshield at the lights of downtown. Damien did not start the engine. He simply waited. Finally, I turned toward him. Is it true? He looked at me. Yes. My chest tightened. Then tell me everything. Damien lowered his eyes for a moment. 3 years ago, when I was still involved with the family, Alexander asked me to review the original business agreement between our families. Your name was not included, but you added it. I suggested adding a clause that would protect your family from being pushed aside if the agreement changed. I stared at him. That does not explain why my name was there. It was supposed to be temporary. He paused. Alexander changed the wording after I left. I felt my anger rise. And you never told me. I should have. Why did you not? Damien looked genuinely regretful. Because I believed staying away from the family would keep you out of it. I thought if I disappeared, Alexander would eventually remove your name. But he did not. No, the silence inside the car felt heavier than before. I looked out the window. So all this time, I thought you were the one person who had nothing to do with what happened to me. Damien nodded slowly. I understand why you feel betrayed. Do you? I turned toward him. You knew my name was connected to your family before I ever met you. You knew Alexander had plans for me. And you still came to that hotel acting like you were simply helping me leave. I was helping you leave. But you were also hiding something. Yes. He did not defend himself. Somehow, that made it harder to stay angry. Why should I trust you now? I asked. Damien took a slow breath. You should not. Not yet. I stared at him. That is all you have to say? You deserve the chance to decide without me trying to persuade you. He finally started the car. If you want me gone, I will leave. I watched the city pass outside the window. Part of me wanted to tell him to go. Another part remembered every moment when he had given me a choice instead of taking one away. Take me home, I said. The apartment. Yes. He drove in silence. When we reached the building, I opened the door but did not get out immediately. Damien. He looked at me. What? I am not ready to forgive you. I know. And I am not ready to trust you. I know. I hesitated. But I still want the truth. He nodded. Then I will give you all of it. The next morning, Damien brought every document he had kept from the Blackwood family records. We sat at my kitchen table for hours. Page by page, the story became clearer. Damien had once tried to protect my family through a legal clause. Alexander had later transformed that clause into a private arrangement without Damien's approval. The truth was complicated, but one thing became undeniable. Damien had made a mistake by keeping silent. Alexander had made a choice by taking control, and I had been caught between them without ever being asked what I wanted. When I finished reading, I closed the folder. I am going to talk to Alexander. Damien nodded. I will come with you if you want. I looked at him. No, his expression remained calm. All right. I need to do this myself. He gave me the smallest smile. Then do it yourself. That was the moment I understood the difference between them. Alexander had always believed standing beside me meant standing in front of me. Damien finally understood that standing beside me meant letting me walk first. By the time I reached Alexander's office that afternoon, I had already decided one thing. I was not going there to ask for permission. I was going there for answers. The winter sun had already begun to fade, leaving the city wrapped in pale gray light. I walked through the quiet lobby with my shoulders straight and my hands steady, even though my heart was racing. Alexander was waiting near the windows when I entered. He did not look surprised. "You came alone." I said I would. He nodded toward the chair across from his desk. "Sit." I remained standing. I would rather stand. A faint expression crossed his face. "You have changed." Maybe I finally stopped letting everyone else decide who I should be. His eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice remained calm. "Damien told you." "Everything." "Not everything." "Enough." I placed the copies of the agreement on his desk. "Why did you change the original arrangement?" Alexander looked down at the papers. "Because circumstances changed." "That is not an answer. Your family needed protection. And you decided marriage was the price?" He was silent. I felt something inside me settle. For the first time, I was not afraid of his silence. "You loved me," he said quietly. "I did." "Then you know I believed you." "I know. But you never trusted me enough to let me choose." Alexander looked toward the window. "I believed I was protecting you from a world you did not understand. You were protecting your own plans." He did not argue. That silence told me more than any explanation could have. I took a slow breath. "There is something else." Alexander looked at me. "Victor Hale." His expression changed immediately. "What about him?" "Someone inside your organization has been sharing information with him." "Who told you?" "The records did." He stood and walked toward the desk. "Claire, this is not something you should involve yourself in." I almost smiled. "That is exactly what you used to say when you wanted me to stop asking questions." He stopped. "I am not asking you to trust me." "Good. I am asking you to stay out of something you do not understand." "Then explain it." Alexander looked at me for a long moment. "Victor has been trying to gain influence over the family for years. Someone has been giving him information. I thought it was Marcus. Damien found the records too." Alexander's expression hardened. "Damien has been investigating without telling me. And you have been hiding things from both of us." He did not answer. The room became quiet again. Then Alexander said something I never expected to hear. "I was wrong about you." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I thought you needed someone to make difficult decisions for you." His voice was softer now. "I was wrong." I felt no triumph. Only sadness for the years we had both misunderstood what love was supposed to mean. "I am not coming back," I said. Alexander nodded slowly. "I know." I turned toward the door. "Claire." I stopped. "Damien will tell you he is different from me." I waited. "Make sure he proves it." I looked back at him. "That is exactly what I intend to do." When I stepped outside, the cold air felt clean against my face. Damien was waiting across the street, exactly where he had promised not to interfere. He did not approach. He simply watched until he knew I was safe. I crossed the street. "It is done," I said. "Are you all right?" "Yes." He nodded. "What did he say?" "He admitted he was wrong." Damien looked surprised. "That sounds like Alexander." I smiled faintly. "No." It sounded like someone finally realizing he cannot control everything. Damien looked at me carefully. "And what do you want now?" I thought about the apartment, the documents, my family's past, and the future I had spent so long allowing other people to design. Then I looked at him. "I want to find out who has been working with Victor." Damien nodded. "Then we will find out." "We?" I asked. "Only if you want me there." I held his gaze for a moment. "I do." His expression softened. But neither of us noticed the black sedan parked at the end of the street, where someone inside was watching the building we had just left. The black sedan was gone by the time Damien and I reached the corner, but I could not shake the feeling that someone had been watching us. I looked back once. The street was quiet. Snow rested along the sidewalks, and the windows of the office building reflected only the fading afternoon light. "You saw it too," I said. Damien nodded. "I did. Do you know who it was?" "Not yet." We continued walking, but something had changed. This was no longer only about Alexander, the agreement, or the secrets inside the Blackwood family. Victor Hale had become part of the story, and someone inside the organization had been feeding him information. The next morning, Damien called me before I had finished my coffee. "We found Marcus." My heart tightened. "Where?" "At one of the family offices." He agreed to talk. We met Marcus Reed in a quiet conference room later that afternoon. He looked older than I remembered, tired rather than threatening. Damien placed the financial records on the table. We know you have been communicating with Victor. Marcus looked down. I have. I felt a chill move through me. Why? He took a slow breath. Because I believed Victor could prevent Alexander from making the same mistake again. Damien frowned. What mistake? Marcus looked at me. The agreement involving Claire. Silence filled the room. You were trying to stop Alexander? I asked. Marcus nodded. I thought if Victor gained enough information, he could pressure Alexander into canceling the arrangement. Damien leaned forward. Instead, you gave Victor access to private information. I know. Marcus's voice broke slightly. I made a terrible decision. I looked at the documents. What about my father's company? Marcus explained that Victor had discovered the old financial records and used them to create pressure against the Blackwood family. He had never intended to help my family. He had wanted leverage. The truth was finally complete. There had been no secret plan by Damien to control me. There had been no hidden demand waiting behind the key to the apartment. Damien had made one mistake years ago by failing to challenge the agreement more directly, but he had spent the years since trying to correct it. Alexander had made a different choice. He had taken an agreement and turned it into control. And Victor had used both men's mistakes for his own advantage. When we left the office, the winter sky was beginning to clear. Damien and I stood outside beneath the pale afternoon sun. It is over, I said. The agreement? The fear. He looked at me. What will you do now? I smiled. I am going home. To the apartment? For now. He smiled. That sounds reasonable. I took a breath. Damien. Yes. I want you to come with me. He looked surprised. Are you sure? For the first time in a long time, I am sure of something. We walked toward the waiting car, but I stopped before opening the door. There is one thing I need you to understand. He turned toward me. I am not choosing you because you are a Blackwood. He listened. I am not choosing you because you are dangerous. I am choosing you because when I had nothing left to trust, you gave me a choice. Damien smiled quietly. Then I will keep giving you choices. I reached for his hand, not because I needed protection, but because I wanted him beside me. We stood there for a moment beneath the pale winter sky, two people finally free from the decisions other people had made for us. I had once believed leaving Alexander meant walking away from one powerful man. I understood now that I had been walking toward something much more important. Freedom, trust, and a love I had chosen for myself. Damien opened the car door and waited. This time, I did not hesitate. I stepped inside beside him, knowing that whatever came next would finally be ours to choose.